Okay, so we're gonna go over Penal Law 80, fine for felony. I'm gonna try to also hit 80.5, which is fines for misdemeanors and violation. So remember, penal law is about the punishment for the crime. These are fines that are incurred for a felony. And so what we're gonna see in these two sections are we're going to see the fixed rate and then any exceptions to that. One of the things that is brought up is the term gain. So I'm going to explain that real quick. So basically, if the defendant stole or the crime was, $100,000 that they stole, and let's say that they, only had $25,000 left, and that's what they turned in at the time that they were arrested. That means that the leftover amount is $75,000. So in other words, the defendant who committed the crime gained $75,000 because they stole $100,000, but they only returned $25,000. So they're at a gain of $75,000, right? And so some of the repercussions of that is that the penalty that they'll receive is that they have to pay what is termed double their gain. So whatever they didn't return back, you're going to double that. So they didn't return $75,000 of the $100,000, then they're going to have to pay back. If it's a double gain, they're going to have to pay back $150,000. Now, whether or not it's decided whether or not this exception is going to be made to because that's an exception outside of those fixed fines for felony and misdemeanors, that's determined by the effect of, I'm just going to read that one part so you have the terminology of it. Let me just find it. It's here somewhere. Yeah. So, when imposing a fine pursuant to the provisions of this paragraph, the court shall consider the profit gained by defendant's conduct, whether the amount of the fine is disproportionate to the conduct in which the defendant engaged. Disproportionate, in other words, they don't feel that that set fine that they had to pay, that fixed fine, really was punishment enough for the disproportionate incident that happened, okay? And they're going to describe those specifics of the disproportionate to the conduct in which the defendant engaged, its impact on the victims of the crime, right? And defendant's economic circumstances, including the defendant's ability to pay, the effect of the fine upon his or her immediate family or any other persons to whom the defendant owes an obligation to support. So they're considering the disproportion. In other words, like, will the defendant actually be able to, pay that? Or, does the victim deserve, does this defendant, is the crime so bad that the victim deserves to get that double gain back, that penalty outside of the fixed rate? So let's talk about the fixed rates of the fines for felony. So fines for felony, right? And it says right there, fixed by the court. Okay, these are the fixed rates of the fine, not exceeding the higher of $5,000 or, right? So that's the set fixed rate, or double the amount of the defendant's gain. There it is, for the commission of the crime. And then it goes on to talk about everything that I just said, right? So, okay, so now this part, which is C, if the conviction is for any felony defined in Article 220, okay, which is referencing controlled substance, or 221, which is referencing cannabis of this chapter, according to the following schedule. So, okay, so these fines, this is for felonies, right? Fine for felony. This is for felonies that are referencing controlled substance and cannabis use. 220, Penal Law 220 and 221. So this is specific to controlled substance felonies and cannabis felonies, okay? And the fines are for A1 felony, because remember, you have two subdivisions of A felonies. You have A1 and A2. So A1 felonies, it's $100,000. A2 felonies is going to be half that amount at $50,000. Then we go B felonies, that's going to be $30,000. And then C felonies, which is going to be half of that, $15,000. Now hold on, because I lost my place. Oh, on my computer here. Give me a minute. Oh, Jesus. Okay. So, all right. So those are felonies, right? Now, when we get down to paragraph 2 and 3, this is still under 80. Okay, this is defining, what gains means. I already went over that. This part talks about if they're unable to determine what the gain was, the amount, then they're going to hold a hearing. Okay, so I'm going to read that real quick. So when the court imposes a fine for a felony pursuant to paragraph B, which is this one up here, the double the amount for the defendant's gain. Okay, so this is referencing the gain of subdivision 1 of this section. The court shall make a finding as to the amount of the defendant's gain from the crime. If, here it is, if the record does not contain, here it is, sufficient evidence to support such a finding or to permit adequate consideration of the matters specified in paragraph C. Okay, C is about the fixed rate for the drug stuff, right? The drug fines for the felonies dealing with drugs. Of subdivision 1 of this section, the court may conduct a hearing upon such issues. Okay, and what they're making a point of in section 4 is that none of these relate to corporations, and it says it right there. Exception, the provisions of this section shall not apply to a corporation. It's also saying all monies in excess of $5,000 received or collected in payment of a fine imposed pursuant to paragraph C of subdivision 1. Okay, those are the ones related to drugs of this section, are the property of the state, and the state comptroller shall deposit all such fines to the rehabilitative alcohol and substance treatment funds established pursuant to section 97cc of the state finance law. So basically, that money, $5,000 of that fine, if it's above that amount, is then going to that fund, the alcohol fund. What is it? Alcohol. It's hard to read while I'm filming. Hold on. Yeah, to the rehabilitative alcohol and substance treatment fund. So that's where that money is going. Okay. If it's more than the $5,000 and they doubled the gain, or tripled the gain, that's where it's going, because there is a reference to tripled. Okay, so now we're going to jump to misdemeanor. I'm skipping 6 and 7. We're just going in. This is the same kind of thing. You're going to have a mention of gains here as well. So remember, the gain is what the defendant didn't return out of the theft. Okay, so 80.05 is dealing with fines for misdemeanors and violations. Okay. and I'm just going to call those out, right? Misdemeanor A is up to $1,000. Misdemeanor B misdemeanor is up to $500, half of that. Unclassified misdemeanor is in accordance with law or ordinance that defines the crime. Violation is $250. Okay, there can be an alternate sentence for misdemeanor or violation, right? So generally, court may sentence the defendant to pay an amount not greater than double the amount of the defendant's gain, not exceeding, so there's a cap here, $5,000. All right, so again, we're talking about the gain. We have these fixed fine rates of up to 1,000, up to 500, in accordance with or ordinance that defines the crime for unclassified misdemeanors, and violation is $250, right? So 1,500 in accordance, $250. Okay, and then an alternate sentence, dealing with gains is double the amount, but not exceeding 5,000. So let's just read that. Class A misdemeanor, a sentence to pay a fine for a Class A misdemeanor shall be a sentence to pay an amount fixed by the court, not exceeding 1,000, there it is, not exceeding $1,000, provided, however, that a sentence imposed for a violation of section 215.80 of this chapter may include a fine in the amount equivalent to double the value, there it is, of the property unlawfully disposed of in the commission of the crime. Okay. Class B misdemeanor, a sentence to pay a fine for Class B misdemeanor shall be a sentence to pay an amount fixed by the court, not exceeding, there it is, $500. 3, unclassified misdemeanor, a sentence to pay a fine for an unclassified misdemeanor shall be a sentence to pay an amount fixed by the court in accordance with the provision of the law or ordinance that defines the crime. Violation, a sentence to pay a fine for a violation shall be sentenced to pay an amount fixed by the court, not exceeding, there it is, $250. Okay, let me just check this quick. In the case of a violation, defendant outside this chapter, if the amount of the fine is expressly specified in the law or ordinance that defines the offense, the amount of the fine shall be fixed in accordance with that law or ordinance. Okay, and that again is relating. Okay, alternate sentence, if a person has gained, here it is, has gained money or property, I can't read like that, through the commission of any misdemeanor or violation, then upon conviction thereof, the court, in lieu, which means in place of, imposing the fine authorized for the offense under one of the above subdivisions, may sentence the defendant to pay an amount fixed by the court, not exceeding double the amount of the defendant, here it is, double the amount of defendant's gain from the commission of the offense, provided, however, that amount fixed by the court pursuant to the subdivision upon a conviction under 11-1904 of the Environmental Conservation Law shall not exceed, there it is, shall not exceed $5,000. Okay? In such event, the provisions of subdivisions 2 and 3, okay, which is going back to the gain, explaining what the gain is, and defendants for crime if it does not contain sufficient evidence to find adequacy. Okay, and then the hearing. Remember, if they can't figure out what it was, the amount of the defendant's gain, they hold the hearing, so it's referencing and referring back. Okay, so not exceeding 8,000. If they don't know it, they don't know the number, they go to the hearing, and there it is. I didn't get to the so go over the corporation one, which is 810, so maybe I'll do that in another video. The last one, 815, is pretty simple. Multiple offenses, you're only going to get fined for one of them. Okay, so if you have 2 offenses in the same ticket or whatever arrest, right, where a person is convicted of 2 or more offenses committed through a single act or omission, or through an act or omission, this is 8015, which in itself constitutes one of the offenses and also was a material element of the other, and the court imposes a sentence of imprisonment or a fine, or both for one of the offenses, a fine shall not be imposed for the other. So you got two offenses, you're only going to get one fine. The provisions of this section shall not apply to any offense or offenses set forth in the vehicle and traffic law. And that's that. Okay, the only one I skipped over was 8010, and that's fines for corporations. I'll just give you the numbers for that. So fines for corporations, hold on. Okay, felony, $10,000, Class A, $5,000, Class B, these are misdemeanors, $2,000, violation, $500, and under alternate sentence for misdemeanor or violations, and this again is regarding corporations. You can read that in 80.10. Court may sentence the defendant to pay an amount not greater, here we go again, than double the amount of defendant's gain or 3 times the amount of defendant's gain. Penal Law 496, corrupting the government. Okay, so you know it's probably the same language, but I didn't get to read it, so go read it.